Okay, we're back at last. I'm back. I say we, but it's really me. It's me, myself, and I. Um, Welcome to The Shape of My Heart with Shawn and Cohen. That's me. And tonight, episode 4, I'm just working a couple things on the board here. I've got Blog Talk Radio. The chat is open. If you want to come and talk to me, go to blogtalkradio.com/Cafe Esoterica Radio. You'll find the live show is broadcasting there, but you can't see me there. If you want to see me, and it's a bit dark on the old Instagram, I don't know how to get a light under there that actually works. Maybe, it still looks too dark to me. I don't know how to make it lighter. That's a little bit better if I hold it up, but can't do the whole show holding up the phone. But you can come over to my YouTube channel, which is go to YouTube and put in, in the search Cafe Esoterica Radio, and you'll find me here. And you can see me. Hello to everyone out there looking in. I see Joy Lerner and Leona Patterson. Hello. Patterson has joined. That's nice. And welcome Joy as well. So if you can hear me and you can see me, then give us a shout, say hi. Tonight's show is going to be very, very, it's very sensitive. If I just want to put a little warning out there, if you feel that maybe it's too much for you, that's okay. I understand. My show, I started this podcast. This is episode 4 now, so we're 4 weeks in, to talk about basically heartbreak and what blocks healthy love and what could actually help to heal. Because many, many people all over the world, I have to put the phone down there, kids. I can't see what I'm doing here. Many people all over the world suffer from heartbreak. That's just as clear as can be. Look at the state of the world, and you can well see it. And we've lost a lot of people over this time. A lot of things are going crazy for people. They don't understand what's happening. They're not alone. I question everything. And I also feel that it's a very precarious time to be a human being on planet Earth. But nothing can take the place of absolutely destroying a child through sexual abuse. Nothing. Now, sexual abuse is so rampant that the statistics are 1 in 4. 1 in 4 children are sexually abused, usually by someone they know. So that's usually a family member or a teacher or, someone they trust. Many hundreds of thousands of children get stolen every single day. And this is what has been really exposed in Trump's office. In his presidency, he's talked about a lot, and the whole Epstein Island story, which is as vile as it gets, really. This is a man who ran Disneyland, of all places. And, if you're a pedo, what a great place to work in. You can just pluck all these innocent children and steal them away to some island or some underground place where they're just used as sex slaves. And some of them are as young as babies. Now I heard, because you hear it, you can't help it, it's on the news all the time, that children are actually being born to become these sex slaves. So what are we going to do, world? Are we going to sit back and pretend it doesn't happen? Are we going to stick our head in the sand and say, well, it didn't happen to me, so what do I care? But every 4th person you meet, something like this has happened to. And those are the ones that actually have admitted it. So if you count all the ones who never admitted it, never told an official office of any kind so they could take a statistic about it, then you look at the fact that many, many, many children repress these memories, and they have to. Otherwise, they can't function. They can't survive. whether it happened once or a half a dozen times, or what about the father who kept his daughter in Germany, in Bavaria, literally stuck her in his basement and raped her continuously throughout her life. She bore 2 or 3 of his children. That's the kind of sick crap that's out there. And if you're a soul and this happens to you, you know, this is not something that you can just fluff off. This is not something that it affects every single part of your life. It affects your relationships. It affects your ability to have relationships and to have healthy relationships. Most important thing. Anyone can have a relationship, but a healthy relationship, a relationship where it's not just you giving all the time, but it's give and take and it's mutual respect. Often, and I have all my notes here, but I'm just going off the fly now because I know all this very well. I've worked with many, many people who've had these issues, including myself. So I'll just put that out there. I am a survivor of sexual abuse and in my childhood. Yes, I am. And I am one of the 4. And this show means a lot to me to get this out into the public and to tell people about why it's so important to heal from this and how it affects every part of your life. But let's go back to the beginning. I hope you can still see me on Instagram. I see myself, so you must do. And also live streaming on YouTube, right? So hopefully nobody's in the chat room there. Okay, I have to move the phone in order to see. I'm terribly sorry. It's a bit higgledy there, but there you go. Now I'm 64 years old. I know spring chicken, okay? When I was young, I say that with fondness. I'm happy to be 64, happy to be alive. But when I was young, nobody ever uttered the word sexual abuse. In fact, sexual harassment was de rigueur. Men were doing it day in and day out. They were doing it at the office. They were doing it at work. They were doing it at home. They were doing it, you know, that was what it was like to be a man in the 1960s and 70s. Now, then you have this whole free love thing come up. And, you know, hello, Patricia. Nice to see you, Patricia. Very nice to see you. Thank you for coming. And very nice. Thank you. It's lovely to see you. So we're talking about sexual abuse in childhood. We're talking about healing heartbreak, of healing sexual abuse. It's a very heavy subject. Look, I'm here to tell you that people can get better, that survivors of sexual abuse can have healthy relationships eventually once they work out their issues. And I do believe that, you know, it's almost like, I hate to say this, I hesitate to say this. You know, I'm a psychic, you know, I'm a medium. I feel like in some instances, surviving this may be a route to becoming a great counselor for this. Not in every instance. So sometimes a soul, this is just if we go the spiritual side of things, sometimes a soul will go into some very heavy, deep, dark stories in order to understand with compassion how anyone could survive this stuff and still have a healthy, you know, so-called life, you know. And if you go to, it's like alcoholism. If you go to AA, you see many people trying to survive being an alcoholic, and then some of the good ones will come around and become counselors. And the same with Narconon, you know, or Narcotics Anonymous, I should say. You know, they've gone through all the drug abuse and they come out the other side and they help people to get clean. So in some cases, please don't misquote me here. I didn't say all. Some cases, the soul will experience this and say, right, I can let this destroy me, or I can stand up. I can understand that the person who abused me was mentally ill, because it is a mental illness amongst many other things. And I'm going to be stronger than that. I'm going to find a way to heal myself. I'm not going to deny it, and I'm not going to ignore it. Many, many children who were sexually abused when I was young would be afraid to tell their parents. In the 50s and the 60s and some of the 70s, it started to relax a little bit in the 70s. Children didn't confide in their parents. They confided in their friends, maybe. The parents were looked at. I mean, I grew up in a great neighborhood. I had a lot of great friends growing up, but this was something that was never, ever, ever discussed. You would never, ever, ever, this wouldn't cross your mind that anyone close to the family or someone would do something like this. And it's in the self-consciousness raising era of the late 60s, going into the 1970s and eventually the 1980s, that we begin to see books about sexual abuse. John Bradshaw, who wrote The Family, I discussed that book last week, is a great, it's an older book, but it's still great. He talks about the dysfunctional family. He talks about how things can go wrong and why. And it would behoove anyone to get that book. So today we're going to talk about what happens. What happens in the dysfunctional family? Why do things like this happen? And how can they be prevented? And then I also want to talk about, I'm just giving you a heads up, I also want to talk about why so many children are stolen. And what you can do to really open your eyes and open your ears and start, be the person who prevents that. Be the person who is that much ahead that you would never, ever, ever. If you have to be a helicopter mom, which is, mother is always around looking, then I think in these days we have established that these things go on. And as horrible as they are, prevention is 9/10 of the cure. Don't leave your children with strangers. A babysitter who's qualified, bona fide, you've checked all, it's common sense really, but you've checked all the, references is important. It's so important. When my daughter was little, we had au pairs, and some of these au pairs were from Poland, here in London, or whatever. And I checked every reference, and the references could even be lies. And I would go to work and think, God, is my daughter going to be there when I get back? And I still worried because I know, it sounds silly, oh, you have to trust someone. No, not where your children are concerned. You have to really look out for them. And if you have nieces and nephews or you're a grandparent, it's really important because as I said at the beginning of the show, 1 in 4 children are sexually abused. What does it do to it? That's just the ones that admit it, and that's just the stats we know. The ones who are repressed, when you have sexual abuse memories are repressed, you would say, no, that never happened to me, yet you have all the symptoms. When you have symptoms of trauma, the body displays it. It reflects in the way you live your life. And people say, well, how does it reflect? What do you mean? What are you talking about? If you keep having relationships that are abusive, that's just the first sign. If you yourself are promiscuous, if you're over promiscuous, and what is over promiscuous? Well, let's just say you don't care who you're sleeping with. That's usually a sign that sexual abuse has happened in childhood. If you have an inability to be intimate with someone, tremendous fear. The body, there's a great book, and I have it here in my notes, and I'll just jump to it because it's a really, really good book to get. It's called The Body Keeps the Score, and Mind, Brain, and Body in the Transformation of Trauma. And it's by Bessel, Bessel, Der Van Kolk, Kolk. And in this book, it talks about how trauma is lodged in various points of our body. And if trauma is lodged in various points of our body, it will show up in various ways. So eating disorders are usually a pretty good clue that the child has been abused in one way or another, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, or sexual, right? And even chronic illness, we know, is linked back to abuse in childhood, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, any violation, really. And so look at all the people who are chronically ill. So this just gives you some clue to the vastness of this problem. And why do we abuse our children? Why would anyone do that to a child? Well, let's go there, shall we? You know, abusers are usually, by default, children who've been abused themselves. So you have half of that category. That's a half. The other half will grow up to never do that. Will learn from childhood, I would never do that to my own child, and I would, you know, maybe even protect children, be overprotective of their children. So you have that split. Now, why would anyone hurt a child if they themselves suffered that? I'm going to give you something that's really interesting here. It's the mentality is power. It's not sexual, you know, satisfaction, really. It has more to do with power. Rape of a woman or even a man at any age is about control and power. That's it. And so who would do something like this? Well, let's give you the list. We have narcissists who have no regard whatsoever for the other person. If you're mother or father, let's just go with the male to the female, but it can be any sex and it can be any age. If either one of them were narcissistic, you know, a narcissism isn't self-esteem or self-love. It isn't loving myself too much. It's having no regard for other people. So you could steal things from them and could care less. You could rob them blind. You could, you know, set their house on fire if you felt like it. And you could rape them too, and it wouldn't matter to you. It was all about power. Narcissists get off on power. If you are a psychopath, same story. No regard for other people. A lot of manipulation, but definitely no regard. And then you have sociopaths, you know, and these people manipulate people to do their bidding, but often they you know, these are isms. These are genuine mental disorders, right? Now, when I was looking up a lot of things about this, right, I thought to myself, how would you, if you went through something as horrific as this, how could you possibly heal? Well, of course, there's therapy, isn't there? Therapy is the number one place to go to. And if you need a good therapist, try the nspcc.org.uk. I'll put all the links for everything in our chat room. I mean, in my chat room. I could put them in. You know, we have a Facebook group called The Shape of My Heart. Please come there because I put tons and tons of information in there. So go to Facebook and put The Shape of My Heart. You'll see it's a private group. Of course, I'll let you in, just, you know, ask to come in. And I have loads of links to information, things you can download, things you can print out, and also a list of books to help you. But one of the ways you can get to a therapist is through www.nspcc.org.uk. That's here in the UK. Of course, they have the NSPCC in America too. Okay, and it really is the letters, if you will, if you don't know and you never heard of this before, is stands for the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. And they have counselors, they have all kinds of information to help people who've been abused. And if you suspect someone is abusing a child, you can call there too. You know, a lot of people go through things that are so traumatic, they can never have a healthy adult life. They can never have a relationship. They probably work at the lowliest job. They can never create a decent income for themselves because they've had such trauma. And that trauma is often repressed with drugs, with alcohol, with compulsive behavior, with overspending, gambling, porn. That's another thing. So their sexual appetite, if you will, can become very corrupted. They don't understand that sex is an act of love. They miss that. When you take away the innocence of a child, you have basically robbed them of something so sacred. You might as well cut their arm off, you know? We need our children to be innocent, to believe in goodness, and to believe that there are good adults out there that want to support them and help them, like their teachers, like their priests, like their rabbis, like their Boy Scout leaders. And while I was doing the research for this show, you can't even believe it. I mean, it's shocking for me to tell you this, but I have it here in my notes. I had to write it down. The most recent news is 90,000. So that's not 9,000. That's 90,000 cases filed because of sexual abuse in the Boy Scouts. It's so shocking, isn't it? The Boy Scouts, if you don't know, London is a wonderful city. I know my friend Patricia knows that. And I love living here, right? But Baden, I think the surname is Baden. I can't remember. Baden Powell, is that it? That comes to mind. He created the Boy Scouts here in London. And there's still a big, where they used to meet, a big place, like a building. So it's so sad to think that those poor young boys are going in there to learn how to be, comrades, and learn how to hike, and learn how to, I don't know, create a campfire or something. And this is what happens to them. In the same reference of the pedo priest in my own hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I have to say it because it's so shocking. 300 Catholic priests were arrested for pedophilia. 300, not one or two, which is bad enough. 300. So the children who grew up and going to those churches, maybe being in the choir, okay, maybe going after school, thinking that they were getting close to God. I'm sure the parents thought, what is the safest place in the world for my children to be? Oh, at church with the priest. But what happened is the priest sexually abuses the child. Now the child's brain becomes completely wired in a different way, in a very toxic way. And this is the other thing. Our brains are wired for love and intimacy in a good way, using proper boundaries as parents. When you bond with your mother when you're born, not everyone gets that. Children are given up for adoption and what have you. But let's just say that when you're bonding after the birth, you bond with your mother. That bonding sets off all kinds of not toxins, but all kinds of positive. The brain is firing like crazy and creates the neurons that connect to love. So, you get all the positive, like dopamine and what have you, all the bonding sort of hormones come in there. When you've been with your mother 6 months, a year, 2 years, you begin to separate from your mother at 2. And you begin to realize, oh, she and me, this is for boys and girls, we're not the same person. It's so beautiful that God made us like this, or whatever you believe. But if you understand the just the physicality of it, as well as the emotion, that the head knits together at 2. It's almost like the little soul can come and go out of its body, because it was used to being a big soul before it got here. And then at 2, it's like, okay, this is your life now. You kind of get in there and stay in there and walk this path. This is your life. And it begins to separate from mommy, and it says, okay, you're you and I'm me. It begins to understand that it's a separate individual. And what happens is it goes towards its father. Now, this is true for every single child. This is psychology of children. And they're learning that independence. If the child is sexually abused by the father at that point, what do you think that child is going to learn? It's going to learn that it can't be independent from its mother, because it's so scary, that the father is not to be trusted, that the father doesn't love it, And often, if it's not the father, it could be an uncle, it could be a grandparent, it could be anyone, right? But usually the stats show us that this happens within the families. It's sad. It's so sad. So now you have a child who perhaps for the first 2 years of its life was, okay. And then this happens. And then the child has all the neurons that were so positive begin to fire in a negative way. Fear. Sexual abuse of a child at 2 must be a horrific experience for that child. Just the sheer physicality of it. If you talk about children who are 5, 6, 8, there's no comfort in this experience. Pedophilia is on the rise to the point where I actually saw through Facebook a book that is a children's book. I couldn't believe it. Kind of saying, oh, Uncle so-and-so has come over to stay and he's sleeping with little Timmy. And he's showing little Timmy all his body parts. And then they have this big cuddle at the end. And, it's perfectly normal for Uncle Timmy. And I couldn't believe it. So there is a collective, disgusting, vile, pedophilia programming out there aimed at children. And we see it all the time in children's fashion. We see it, my little girl, I used to take her to Primark, which is it wasn't a bad place 20 years ago. It was a big, and they had we buy some clothes there for her. And they would have bras for girls that were like 4 years old. No, this is wrong. They would also have little shirts for little girls that says sexy on it. You do not promote a child. You don't have a child walking around with a t-shirt that says sexy on it. This is pedophilia. This is to attract the attention of pedophiles. I don't understand the mothers who would do something like that. I really don't, because if you love your daughter or your son, because it happens to both, you don't do this. You don't put them forward. Now, this is another thing, and then we'll go on to some solutions, but this just came in too from Florida, where I used to live. And this was today's news. Today's news. I couldn't believe it. I was typing everything up from a show. And this is the latest news out of Florida. I think it's out of Tallahassee, Florida. Another sad case is a teenage girl who was basically sold by her own mother. Yeah, her own mother, okay? I mean, it's shocking, to over 200 pedos to have underage sex with her. This case was recently revealed online. The police arrested 200 pedos who exploited one teenage girl aged 13 to 14. It's just sickening what's out there. So, we could go on and on. I could go on and on and on, about what has happened to our innocent children. In Facebook, you see a lot of things, save our children. And if you love children and want to keep them safe, for God's sake, don't leave them with strangers. Don't walk away for a minute in a grocery store and leave them in an aisle by themselves. Don't put them on a park bench while you go to, get something out of the car. Never leave your child alone by itself, okay? If you're taking them to McDonald's and there's, some kind of plaything in there, watch them. Don't walk away. Don't go to the bathroom and leave them by themselves. These are just simple ways. I see where I live in Kilburn here in London. Women walk by all the time. The child, 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, is like at least 30 feet behind the mother, walking by itself. What kind of parenting is that? Sometimes the father too, oh, I'm a man, so I don't have to hold my child's hand. It's ridiculous. The child doesn't know, the city streets. So we have to get conscious. We have to stop pretending the world is Disneyland. As you can see, the guy who ran Disneyland exploited and stole all these young girls and boys to have sex with all these celebrities and these politicians. It's a sick, sad world. So let's protect ourselves, our children. Let's educate our children, okay? I had this discussion with my daughter when she was about six or 7 years old. And I said to her, if anyone comes near you and wants to touch you in the places that you shouldn't be touched, and I had to explain everything as you do, you run and tell someone else. You run and tell a teacher, you run and tell me, you can call me because I gave her a phone to go to school with. These are the ways that you can protect your children. And the other thing too, of course, is the pedophile the abuser always says, don't tell. If you tell, I will come and kill your mother. If you tell, I will kill you. The children have to tell the truth. They have to be able to find someone they can tell. And if you have nieces and nephews, tell them this. You can come to me if someone bothers you. You can come to me if someone bullies you. You can come to me if someone has tried to touch you in an inappropriate way. The children must have this safety net, and they must be able to trust someone. Sometimes they can't trust their own parents, but they might be able to trust an aunt or uncle or a grandparent. Sometimes they can trust an older sibling, but sometimes it's the older sibling that rapes the child. So, we have to be really just conscious about it. Okay. Other than the NSPCC organization, there are many other organizations out there that help adults who survive sexual abuse, and I want to talk about them right now. One of the best ways, of course, is to work with a therapist, as I said, and go to a therapist that's specific for this, because a lot of therapists may not be trained they might be trained in trauma, but not sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is a whole nother level of learning for them, right? So it's very important to go to a therapist who actually knows what they're doing in this department. Now, I mentioned some of the books, and I'll go back and say some more. So we have a very, very big book that came out, I think it was in the 90s, The Courage to Heal, A Guide for Women Survivors of Child Sexual Abuse by Ellen Bass, B-A-S-S, and Laura Davies. And that book I remember coming out, I'm pretty sure it was the 90s, right? And another great book, other than The Body Keeps the Score, which I mentioned already, is Waking the Tiger, Healing Trauma. This book was an international bestseller by Peter A. Levine and Carolyn Ainscough and Kay Toon. And finally, just on the books, there are many good books out there. These are just the ones that I've read and I know about. This is the one I have, and this is called Rescuing the Inner Child, Therapy for Adults for Adults Sexually Abused as Children by Penny Parks. Now, sometimes, and this has also happened in the history of trying to go to therapy and get helped, some people have had false memories implanted under hypnosis. And this is a whole nother level. We could do a show just on this. But I must bring it up because I feel it's very important. I'm going to tell you a story about myself. It's not a pretty story. If it's too much for you, by all means leave. But I survived sexual abuse in my family. My older brother, really mentally ill. God only knows what my parents did to him before I showed up. But, he really was always raging, violent, angry. And, he really was not right in the head. And me and my siblings, that's my younger sister, my younger brother, we, like kids do, you make fun of people you don't understand. He would get really violent and beat us up. And I mean, it was every day. You come home from school, my mother wouldn't be there, there'd be no one home, beat up me, my sister, my younger brother. So that's abuse in itself. Now, I'm 14, I'm beginning to mature as a young woman, and he's hiding in my closet while I'm trying to get dressed. And the closet had slots so he could see through it. And I used to catch him because I'd hear something, And now I shared this room with my younger sister. She's a year younger. But somehow he always got in there while I was changing or getting ready for, I'd go out with my friends or whatever. And it escalated and escalated to the point I told my parents, I told my mother, I don't know how many times she would call his name and say, stop it. That was it. She never really addressed him, his problems. My father refused to take him to therapy. No son of mine is going to therapy. So, of course, he got worse, didn't he? So at a certain point, I was probably 15, and I was probably, this is maybe 14 going on. And I had met my first boyfriend. So I was very much in love with my boyfriend, and he was 16, and that's the one that died. And, I'm doing writing a musical about him. But he was lovely to me, and he showed me really that what love is. And he never pressured me. We had our little arguments, but was never cruel to me, right? But in my home growing up, there was an awful lot of cruelty. And I don't know why my mother couldn't cope with this. I don't know what the problem was really. But one day it was downstairs in the den. I came in, and my brother was down there masturbating. And I was shocked. I walked in, and there he was. And he put his fist to my face, and he made me watch him do that. And I've never told anyone. I'm telling the entire world this story. I have never revealed that to anyone except my therapist. And I had to, under threat of being beaten up. Now, remember, he used to beat me up a lot when we were growing up. I had to sit there and watch that. And when he was done, I ran out of the room. I locked my bedroom door, and I cried, and I think I threw up. When you abuse your sibling or children, the trauma is so great. And here I was just in love with my first boyfriend. So I know how this affected me, but I never knew how deep the effect of it went. And actually, once I got to London and I was working as a counselor myself, but really with my psychic work, I met a wonderful student of mine, and I was 30 years old at this point. And she was interested in what was happening in the metaphysics classes. She was a student of mine, and she was learning a lot. And she was raised up north in Manchester. And she lived here in London with her husband, and they were great people. I really loved them. And she started telling me this story about, she thought she would like to go to therapy. And I said, well, pick a good therapist and go. In self-realization, it's important to do therapy. It's important to understand what your history is. It's important to understand how much trauma can affect you, and particularly how it affects not even just you, but now we know 14 generations of trauma can be passed on. So that's your grandparents, your great-grandparents, and so on and so forth. And she started going to a therapist who did hypnosis on her. And under hypnosis, she found out she was sexually abused. And because I was her teacher and she loved me, I loved her, she was great, she shared this with me. This was really, who can you tell this to, you know? And she said it was, you know, she had a really tough upbringing too. And she said, I can't believe it. I never realized it. Memories can be repressed. In the end, everything she was telling me, I was getting like these hits, you know, like, wow, that sounds like something, you know, wow. You know, it was like my brain was just, you know, waking up to something. And I said to her, you know what, I'm having some kind of like epiphany. I think maybe I should go to your therapist. So I went to her therapist and I experienced a lot of repressed memories. And these memories were so violent and so horrible that I just thought, how can this be true? How can it be true? In the end, I said to myself, do I have the symptoms of someone who's been sexually abused in childhood? And the answer is yes. I had every symptom. And so I then said to myself, okay, I'm going to have to accept that this is true, right? Years and years and years later, and I confronted a few people. I confronted my parents, which of course there was massive denial. I met up with my half-sister who shared a story because we share the same father. And she told me something really intimate that happened to her when she was about 5. She's about 8 years older than me. And it was the same story. And how is that possible unless it was true? So I completely believe that I was sexually abused as a child, and I certainly was abused by my older brother. And how this has affected me is that I just couldn't marry anyone. I couldn't trust anyone enough. It took me a long time to get over the death of my first boyfriend, and it took me a long time to get over, you know, I would attract men who would hurt me and abuse me and lie to me and cheat on me and so on and so forth. So I had to do a lot of therapy and a lot of inner work to help heal myself. When my daughter was born, I said to myself, this is never, ever, ever going to happen to her. The buck stops here. And thank God I did the work before I had her. Sometimes people unconsciously pass on, you know, they leave their child sort of open for this to happen. And it can happen unconsciously, right? Sometimes you don't do enough therapy and things happen anyway. So I behoove anyone, if you've had sexual abuse in your past or you think you might have it, just like me, I didn't know how much, you know, because it was repressed, then I can promise you that if it looks like it, if it smells like it, if you know the symptoms of sexual abuse, what are the symptoms? Okay, number 1, bad relationships. Go there. Difficulty in sustaining a healthy relationship. Not having a healthy relationship with yourself, either being self-abusive, self-harming, you know, doing drugs, drinking too much or eating too much, or, you know, any eating disorder can be there. Any kind of inability to fit in, inability to find yourself in life. Like a lot of people say to me, I don't know, why am I here? What's my purpose? I don't know why I'm here. I don't even know myself. There's a great amount of soul loss that happens when a child is abused. And what that means is, if you've ever heard my shows on Cafe Esoterica Radio, you know that I had shamans on. And these shamans are so wonderful. And what they do is they do soul retrieval. And soul retrieval is that when a child or a teenager or even an adult is in a traumatic experience, whatever it may be, they will, a part of them will leave. A part of them will literally jettison out of their body from shock. And sometimes that part will not come back. And I believe this happened to my younger sister, because she never really knew who she was. She never became anyone really as an individual. I was clearly the stronger one in the family because I did. I found my way through a lot of inner work and therapy. But in a dysfunctional family, it's really, there's a lot of pressure to keep not awake, to keep ill, if you know what I mean, to keep the dysfunction going, okay? So if you have any of those symptoms, right, as I mentioned, what if some of the symptoms can be money, sometimes when children are abused, they get, here's $1, here's a pound, it's horrible, like a prostitute, here's $1, here's a pound. And then money has a whole signature behind it that's really a bad reflection. So sometimes people can never make enough money, right? The root chakra, which is the base chakra, is all about survival. And children who've been sexually abused are stuck in the root chakra. So it's survival of the fittest all the time. The huge anxiety, huge, sometimes compulsive behavior, right? They have to do the same thing 15,000 times. They check the door 500 times before they go to bed and all that stuff. It's all based on, germophobia. A lot of it is based on trauma in childhood, not just sexual abuse, but all kinds of trauma. So it's so important that we raise our children with self-respect, self-love, teach them about their bodies, teach them what is appropriate and what isn't. Don't let them watch porn, for God's sake. Don't let them watch horrible TV shows there was a TV show on Netflix recently called Cuties. I canceled my subscription to Netflix because I personally will never support little girls dressing up. I don't care. My mother was a dancer. I love dance. I know that dancing, you can have skimpy outfits on, right? But this was all about the flirt. This was all about very sexually suggestive, right? There's a thin line sometimes, but then it's very obvious, and so if you find that any of this is going on, you have a voice, raise your voice, all right? My voice was raised. I said to the people at Netflix, I don't promote pedophilia. It's a horrible thing. You should never be showing shows like that. And they said to me, well, that's your opinion. I said, it's not my opinion, it's a fact. And then the guy said to me, well, a lot of people have actually canceled us because of it. Well, hello, wake up then and stop putting things like this in our face. We don't want to see it. It's not appropriate, and it's not appropriate for children to see as well. The other thing I would say, just going back to how you heal, right now there's a lot of, there's cultures in hip hop that talk about, pimps and hoes, right? And you can find young people today, millenniums even, are calling themselves hoes. A girl to call herself a hoe, is that respectful in any way, shape, or form? It may be a joke, it may be funny, but words have power and words have meaning. And if you don't know that, be careful what you think, because you can create it. If you love your children, let them listen to music that's uplifting. The words are healthy for them. Not, I killed this man in the hood, whatever. Children need healthy minds to become healthy adults. They need you to emulate and show them what love is. You are there. With children, it's often monkey see, monkey do. If the parents are showing love, to each other, self-respect to each other. Or if you're a single mother like I was, if I showed my daughter self-worth. I showed her, and even though I was sick with Hashimoto's when she was growing up, I still took care of myself as best as I could. And I think she takes good care of herself today. She's 24 and she always takes care of herself. So I know that if you do it, they're going to do it. Right. We're going to run out of time. I can't believe how quickly this has gone. So let me just say that there's a beautiful, beautiful podcast by Alanis Morisette. Now, Alanis Morissette wrote Jagged Little Pill. And she's very well known for being, very open-minded. She tells it like it is, right? Open-minded. And she wrote this beautiful song. Well, first, let me tell you that she has a podcast. And in that podcast, she talks about things like recovery from sexual abuse as a child. So do go there and check out her podcast. It's on her website, which is www.alanis.com/podcast. And also, there's a way to find a good therapist if you go to psychologytoday.com/US this is for the American people, US/therapist/trauma and PTSD. Please come into our Facebook group under The Shape of My Heart, and I promise you'll find all the links that I'm talking about there and all the books. I'm going to put them up now after the show. Love yourself. Love your children. Know that they are the future, literally, right? They are your legacy to this world. If you leave them broken and battered, all the generations ahead will be broken and battered. There's no point in that. It's so destructive. If you've been in the slightest bit affected by this broadcast today, and you want me to help you, I can help you too. Okay, I am a therapist. And if you would like me to help you find a therapist, I will do that for you too. Just get in touch by going to, you can email me at The Shape of My Heart by Shawn M. Cohen @gmail.com or Cafe Esoterica @gmail.com, and I'll get it. Come to the Facebook page. You can shoot me a message on Instagram. You can also shoot me a message in our Facebook group. We have 5 minutes left. I can't believe how quick it's gone, right? But it's very important to speak your truth. You're still a good person, even if bad things have happened to you. Heal from trauma and childhood abuse and reclaim your life. It's your life. You only get one in each incarnation, right? No one ever has the power to take that away from you. Love the person in your life who has gone through such a trauma. Don't ostracize them. See, that's another thing. Sometimes you spill your beans and you tell people, and then they go, ooh, I don't want to talk to you, which is horrible, really horrible for the survivor. So we all deserve to be loved, even those of us who were abused by someone else out of our control. Love heals when it is given unconditionally. And on that note, I'm going to play out with this beautiful song. I love this song. I just heard it today, a couple of days ago when I was looking for a song to end the show with, by Alanis Morisette, and it's called, and listen to the words because it's just beautiful. It's called That I Would Be Good. And, it's about being loved no matter what happens to you. I'm going to just go over to my Blog Talk Radio studio here and play it out. Here we go. We have, let's see, where is it? And it's here, 4 minutes and 19 seconds. Goodbye, good luck, everyone. Take care. As I said, if you need me, I'm here, okay? And wishing you all the best. Hope you can hear, it's a bit loud. Beautiful song. Gorgeous. She's just telling, you know, no matter what happens to me, will you still love me? That I would be good. Am I good enough for you? And often people who suffer sexual abuse feel that way. They don't feel good enough, ever. I mean, it's a tragedy. They go through their whole lives feeling that they're not good enough, no matter how many things they accomplish. So, we don't want our children, we don't want ourselves to be this way. We're great and mighty souls who come to this planet to learn, to grow, to love, to be loved in return. And we deserve that. We absolutely deserve that. So I hope you've learned something tonight, today, this morning, wherever you are in the world. And please come back every week. We have different themes. I'm doing 12 podcasts. We're up to number 4 now, so we've got 6 more to go. Sorry, 8 more to go. And they're all full of, interesting things that help to emotionally heal the heart. And if you want to catch any of them, they're on the archives at Blog Talk Radio. Just go to blogtalkradio.com/Cafe Esoterica Radio, and you'll see them up. Also, I might add, they're on Spotify, they're on Stitcher, TuneIn, and also here on YouTube, and you can watch me broadcast them. So I do hope you'll come back every Thursday at the allotted time. It's 7 p.m. in the UK, 2 in the afternoon EST, and 11 a.m. for 1 hour. The show's only an hour long. And just get a little bit of upliftment every week, a little bit of healing, a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of references that could help you to heal. And if you heal, and I heal, and we all heal, what a wonderful world it will be. I'll say goodbye, good day, good night, wherever you are. God bless, and see you next week. Thank you for coming. Bye now. Okay, I think I'm logged out of here. Let's see. Yes. And let's go back to YouTube. And I always say goodbye last year because I have the most to do to get the video up and running. I hope you've learned something through this video. And as I said, I'll leave some links in the box below. Just look down below to join the Facebook group, which will have all the links you need to get the help you need or to investigate further. Healing your heart is a great act of courage, especially under these times. We are living in the most bizarre, really crazy times. And I haven't talked about COVID-19 or any of my beliefs, but I will get to it. I will talk about it, not in this part of the podcast. But I do think that we as a human race, we as the people deserve to have emotionally healthy lives. Everything comes from there. Everything. The person that you choose to spend your entire life with is going to have the same equivalent of emotional, if the highest score is a 10 for emotional well-being, if you come out of an abused childhood as a 1 or a 2, you're going to attract that type of character to you, 1 or 2, which means they're not going to be very emotionally intelligent. They're not going to be very well balanced. They're not going to be very capable of giving you love because they can't even give it to it themselves. So it behooves you to heal yourself and learn how to heal yourself and do the work. The work isn't easy. It's hard. Okay, I get it. But the result is priceless. And the result for your own future and your own children's future and your grandchildren's future, you can't put a price on that. That is, imagine that they don't have to take on that trauma. And often, a lot of people don't even go to parenting classes. They think, why should I? I know how to parent. No, you don't. If you come from a dysfunctional family, you do not know how to parent. Okay, it's just that simple. If your mother was an alcoholic and your father was a workaholic, what do you know about parenting? If your parents, if your mother was like Leave It to Beaver, June Cleaver, she might have been a codependent who couldn't even step outside the house. Codependency is not healthy. Being completely and totally dependent on your husband for everything is not healthy. Being able to be an independent person and take care of yourself, and then offer to help to take care of others. But first, you must nourish yourself. You must feed yourself, feed your soul, feed your heart, feed your mind, and the rest will follow. And the rest will be good. It's just that simple. Okay, I will say goodbye and God bless, and see you next week, same time, same place, with The Shape of My Heart. This is Shawn Cohen signing off for now. Goodbye.